Welcome back, everybody, to DissedMedia, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting a business from the ground up. And today, we're going to be getting into more of the startup journey. And there's a lot of things that kind of bring us into talking about startups and starting a business. And one of the things that we've always tried to do in this podcast is really chronicle the venture and talk about not just the fun stuff when we talk about views and we talk about the number of likes and shares that we might get and the comments that we may get from everybody. But there's also a little bit of a struggle. I shouldn't say a little bit, a lot of a struggle behind some of that as well. And starting a business and launching your own adventure, it is not for the faint of heart. And today we're going to get into a little bit, it's not necessarily all going to be around the bad stuff. There's plenty of good stuff, but just really about the spirit of why we get into doing this, why we start our own thing, why we get on these adventures of getting into the world of business and starting your own thing. And today I have with us Mr. Mark Dulaney. Mark, how are you?
I am awesome. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really excited to see what we create together.
Oh, love it. Love it. Mark, one of the things I like to start off with is understanding a little bit of the background of what brought you to where we are today. Because everybody's got a journey. Usually I'm finding that a lot of entrepreneurs don't always start as an entrepreneur. You kind of evolve into one through experience. Where's your story start and what brings you to where we are today?
So I like to say I'm 65 and I'm going on 22. And the reason I say that is because from college until 2 years ago, I was pretty mediocre in my life, trying things, doing things, getting things started, never really doing the follow through required to create the results I want. Then in 2023, the spring of 2023, I failed a PSA test. You know what a PSA test is?
Yes.
Prostate specific antigen. And I began doing a lot of testing and ultimately was diagnosed with prostate cancer in November. On October 1st of that same year, I met a woman and she had a cancer experience. She has an extensive cancer experience too much to go into, but ultimately speaking, I went through cancer treatment in 2024 and suffered throughout the entire 2024. And in 2025, in January, I declared I'm a cancer survivor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, it sounds like it, but the truth was, it wasn't. Because being a cancer survivor made me feel like I was just lucky to be alive. That the getting up 3 times at night to go to the bathroom, that all the struggles I had, that feeling like crap, that all that stuff was just okay because I survived. And I think it was April 12th, 2025, I decided, nope, I'm not a survivor. I kicked cancer's ass. Nice. And literally from that moment, I felt better. I've been stronger. I have more energy, still get up a couple of times a night to go to the bathroom. But everything we're going to talk about, what I'm starting up today, emanated from that decision on April 12th, 2025.
So this is a fairly new spirit and outlook on things that you have that's bringing you to what you're doing now.
Correct. And literally everything that I've failed at in the past, I'm using as a lesson to keep other people from making the same mistake I made back then.
So when you say same mistake you made back then, referring to how you viewed your diagnosis or
life in a lot of ways. So I am really good at taking care of my body. I mean, literally speaking, at 65 years old, I still bet I can outrun half the population on the planet. I can do more push-ups and chin-ups. I take no prescription drugs. You know, my body, I've taken great care of. I also take good care of money. Give me a little bit of money, I'll make it go a long way. But the marketing, the making of the money, the relationships, I'm divorced twice. I failed extensively in those areas. And I'm using what I learned to be better with everything today, including my relationship today, including the money I have today, and including what I'm doing to create this that I'm doing now to be more successful moving forward than I have been in the past.
You know what? Tell me a little bit about that. If you don't mind, something that I've shared with some people on the podcast in the past is that in my younger years, very career driven, very goal oriented, still very much so. but I have a different perspective on the meaning of that. But in that pursuit of job and title and income, spent a lot of focus on work, and to the point where for a couple years I had panic and anxiety attacks just from the amount of things that I was taking on and just not managing stuff well. Unlike you, who've done a great job taking care of your body and yourself, I did a terrible job taking care of my health. And it just led to a lot of racked up some achievements, not always good feelings and stuff like that. Just feeling off, feeling bad, not always running on all cylinders like I could. So you had this epiphany of clarity where you said, we can do better. What was it like back before then? What was your attitude? What was your approach? What was your kind of philosophy on life?
No sense of urgency. Just take it a day at a time. I can't tell you how many times I've restarted. Okay, that didn't work this week. Let's try this and that. And I don't mean try making improvements. I mean total restarts. I can't begin to tell you how many times I restarted, how many times I basically started all over from scratch instead of building on what I had created. The other thing would be, I would say, inconsistency. Not doing something every day, but doing it Tuesday and maybe Saturday, and then starting over again in the week. And I would say lying to myself a lot. Okay. If there's three things that your listeners or whoever hears this wants to do those three things, and you will live what I call a very mediocre existence. And that's the whole thing that I'm working on now, is helping people not be mediocre moving forward.
So what was that pattern that you were in that just kind of, caused you to start, stop, restart? If you don't mind, like, what kind of work had you previously been doing before going in the direction you're going now?
So I've written those 3 books behind me for those who are watching. I've written 3 books. I've done a lot of coaching. I've done a lot of things. I don't want to paint the picture I'm a total idiot and a total failure.
No, we never.
Well, yeah, well, I just want to make sure. But the thing was the follow through. The thing was the consistency. The thing was learning from what didn't go well and working on improving that. Instead, I would just scrap it and start all over again.
Okay.
So I've owned probably 100 domain names in my life for every new idea I came up with that I thought would be the big one. And the thing that always held me back was, if it didn't go well, first month, first quarter, first whatever, I would say, okay, that's not working. Let me try something else, as opposed to making that thing better.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, before we got started here, I was telling you that I started DissedMedia a little over 2.5 years ago now. And you started from nothing, right? We had no social media. We had no URL. We had no website. We had absolutely nothing. And I purposely didn't do a whole lot of promotion to my social group when I started this, because the experiment kind of started as an experiment was, let's see how far we can take this thing. I took $5,000 of my own money and I set it up to run. The idea was to make this a profitable media venture. And to this day, it really hasn't been. Like, I'm in the red. And right now, don't have it's a formulating profit model, but it's not really anything there yet. So a lot of this that I'm doing right now is out of passion. The thing that's interesting about what you're saying is, I understand this is probably the third podcast that, well, actually probably more than that, maybe fourth or fifth, but third one that I've really owned and directed and run. And just about in the past, get some episodes under my belt, get some traction, life gets busy, and I drop it, and then I come back to it. And, there's been a couple times, even with the daily pitch and doing this, that it slowed down. So during the start of this business, my mother passed away, my father passed away. And those things really took a toll, like really kind of got me in a funk. And sometimes it was difficult to get started. But the one thing that I've learned about all of this is that You mentioned consistency. The algorithm gods, they want consistency.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things. I'm glad you brought it up because it is one of those things that is probably the hardest thing to do in putting a business out there and getting on social media and all of that stuff. It is being reliably. I said we try and drop a podcast episode every Tuesday. I missed last Tuesday. Missed last Tuesday because my world was simmering and blowing up, and life sometimes the other things that I do just kind of get in the way of getting those things done. So understanding your past, where you have seen where inconsistency has created challenges, where losing focus, losing that momentum, that ambition, like what is your plan? What is your strategy for preventing that or managing that as you're moving ahead now with this new perspective?
I got to be honest with you. That's an interesting question because I don't know if I have a strategy. One of my strategies is desperation. And there's two reasons for desperation. When you go through a cancer journey, you do tend to lose a lot of traction, content, like money, and a lot of stuff. So, in essence, when I say I'm 65 going on 22, I'm graduating from college, starting all over again financially. Number one. Number two, I have a woman in my life that I'm absolutely crazy about. And so I say this like I want to be worthy of her. And that doesn't mean she's saying I'm not worthy. I'm the one who doesn't feel like I'm financially in a place to take care of her. And I want to be that. So I'm not sure if those answer your questions, but those are the two things that are motivating and driving me to be my best this time. And I don't have 6 months or 3 months to piddle around and start all over again. What I'm going to introduce you today, if we get to that, is I'm going to live or die through this project that I'm working on now. And I believe that whether or not you do live or die based on a project, you have to have that attitude towards it, or else you'll just quit and do something else when it gets hard. I'm willing to bet you had that attitude when you started this. That's why you keep doing it.
A little bit, but it's funny. Just because of what we've already talked about, and because of the way we kind of started this, you know, um, when I say live or die, and in fact, it's even in our intro. Like in the intro of the podcast, we say, we're either gonna succeed or this thing's gonna crash and burn. But either way, people are getting a front row seat to whether it happens or not.
So
And so far we're just skimming along the water. There's no high ups and no deep downs. We're cruising, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, I kind of started this experiment of a business with saying it's either going to crash and burn or we're going to make something of it. And I will say, Mark, one of the things that I think I enjoy about doing this is I have this I have idle hands and I like to be creative. And so this helps with that outlet. I just have so much fun doing this that this is my entertainment. I always say, other people, maybe they're big sports fans and they have season tickets and they tailgate every weekend, or you're a photographer and you're always buying gear and you're taking pictures and you're not a professional, but you invest a lot in the things that you love doing. And that's what this is for me. I enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy talking about life and journeys and business and how you get there and how you achieve stuff. So for me, this is my creative outlet. And I think at this point, if it dies, there's a part of me that's going with it because this is what I enjoy doing for fun. So sounds like a lot of people like going on vacation and but this is my fun time. Yeah, that's my kind of drive for it. Now, you were saying your journey right now, where you're doing is life or death. Let's get into it a little bit more. What is the thing that you're working on?
So I think just to continue my story, I talked about the lady in my life and how I really want to become, quote, worthy of her. Again, not her words. She hates it when I say that. These are my words. I want to be more. And so When you don't have much of a retirement, you can't, and you're 65, you can't work your way to a good retirement. You've got to do something special. You've got to create an asset you can sell, or you have to create something with residual income where you get to work less and less, but earn residual. So I didn't want to just be a coach. And I don't use the word just be a coach to be derogatory. I didn't want to just create a job that I owned. I wanted to create a business I could sell someday. So I'm creating something called ending mediocrity. And mediocrity is not a measure of how anyone compares themselves to someone else. It's a measure of how they compare themselves to where they want to be. So if someone wants to make $1 million a year and they make $100,000 a year, that would be someone I would consider mediocre. Not because I think it's mediocre, but because compared to what they want, it is. Same thing's true with the body. And you talked earlier that your body let you down. Well, a mediocre body will create a very mediocre life if not fixed. So helping people be healthier, helping people make more money, helping people do better management of their money. And whatever it is in life that they see themselves as being mediocre, I want to create a way to help them not be great, but understand why they suck, for lack of a better term. There are a million people who will teach you what to do to be successful. I want to claim the space of teaching you why you're not doing all that stuff you already learned. What is it within you that's keeping you from fully executing all those other programs you purchased in the past? That's what I'm working on. It's called ending mediocrity.
So, what are some of the tools or techniques, approaches to this that have helped you?
So the main one that I would say is brutal honesty. So many people blame Joe Biden or Donald Trump. It doesn't matter who the president is. It's the economy, it's the president, it's the governor. They blame things outside of themselves. And so one of the key components of helping people end mediocrity is taking responsibility for what you created. Because the truth is, if you are not the problem, you are a victim or a pawn of who or whatever is the problem. You can't fix it. You're in a lot of trouble, basically, is what I'm saying to you. So, the key component element of everything that I do, even before I started this movement, is if it's not your fault, you can't fix it. So, you being the problem is the best thing that can ever happen to you because you can fix it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The I always find that there's kind of two mental perspectives. I'm very much a pragmatist, so I always try to boil things down into very simple things. And I think the two types of approaches that I often observe is that life happens to you and you're just a continual victim of everything that's happening in the world, right? And your perspective is that all of these bad things happened to me and I don't know why. And the other side of that are people who say, all these bad things happened to me, and I need to figure out what I did wrong. I need to, let's replay the game film. Let's analyze this. Let me try and build in some assurances to avoid things in the future. And how do I course correct to avoid hitting the iceberg or, whatever that block is in the future? And I think it's very easy to work with that second group. But working with that first group who find that there is always someone, something, someone else out there that is preventing them from getting to a particular spot they want to be. That is a very tough nut to crack.
And one other thing about those people who see themselves as a victim is they are often the most miserable people on the planet because they have no control over their future. They feel they have no control. And they also become the most spendthrifts. They spend all their money. They don't care about their health and their future. Like, if you want to make someone miserable, make them a victim, and they will naturally destroy their own lives. And I want to help people not do that. So I make them aware that if you're not the problem, you can't fix it. And then you become your biggest problem.
But how do you get people to acknowledge that because you and I are of a different generation, and the up and coming generation, everybody's kind of has a different perspective to things, right? And I was actually having a conversation with my wife about this recently because I don't blame the millennial or Gen Z generation for the attitudes and approaches that they have to things. And here's why. When I was in my young 20s, when I was 18 ish, when I go back 25 years, the world was a much different place. I'm Gen X, grew up in the biggest peacetime era, big financial boom era of its time. And there were a lot of positive signals in the world. The Berlin Wall came down. People like Martin Luther King had always existed in my life. People like Gandhi always existed in my life. There were a lot of positive signals that people latched onto, and you saw growth, wealth, and prosperity as a potential. I mean, we have shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, which were just all about like, hey, this is what you could achieve someday. And I'm not saying it was all buttercup and roses, but there was a lot of positive momentum. If you look back at the last 25 years from the year 2000, we came into this century with Y2K, and then shortly after that, the dot-com bubble bust. And then after that, we had corporate scandal. In between those things, we had 9/11. For the next 20 years, we're at war. And along that 20-year path, we also dealt with the housing crash. And then to top it off, just to put a cherry on top, a major pandemic that shut the world down. And then we want to tell this generation who's lived through the past 20 years of this, 25 years of this, oh, don't worry about it, guys. Like, there's a positive future out there for you. Things are only going to get better. And the contrast of experience between what you and I had growing up versus what the current generation has, it's different. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of great things and positive things to look forward to. And I'm an optimist. But there's also that, like, how do you get into that mindset when people like housing's expensive, food is expensive, college is expensive, debt is driving everyone crazy, and now we got to refocus their attention on, hey, it's not like own the problem and improve things. Like, how do you crack that nut?
So a couple of things. I'm a Black man. I was born in 1960. And so my world probably looks different than yours. But I will tell you that
Yep.
no matter what happened, slavery still impacts Black people in every major city and small town all across the country. So the stuff that you
Yep.
described from your perspective, it isn't the problem. It's the victim problem of what happened in this country long before those people were born. I can't believe that today there's still people who see racism as their biggest obstacle to their success. But I think that the thing that you didn't mention was how politicians stoke negative feelings for people who see themselves as victims. They constantly say, vote for me. I'm going to go to City Hall, State House, Congress. I'm going to be president, and I'm going to fight for you.
Yeah, I'm going to save you.
And they take away the power of the people to hold themselves accountable. Most of the people who represent poor people are not poor. They are actually financially successful. They've been to college, they have great educations, they have stable families, but they never say that in any of their political speeches. They never say that in anything they do. All they talk about is you're a victim and I'm going to go fight for you. I think that's the biggest factor that affects people who are struggling today. And I live in New York State, and almost every week, a state assembly person or senator says, we need $25 million to fight for this problem, and we're going to solve it. And they go and they hire their sister, their parents, their children, their good friends to fight that problem. They pay them a lot of money, and they make sure they stay in the New York State retirement system so they all have good lives. And we are then the victim and the pawn that I talked to you about earlier when I said, you're either a victim or you're a pawn if you are not the solution. So if I could do one thing, if I were president, I would tell everybody, if you can't fix it, you got a real problem. You got to learn, figure out how to solve your problem, or you're going to be in trouble.
A lot of times in business, and I kind of developed this attitude. I've actually said this to teams that I've ran is anybody can point out a problem, right? And you're welcome to. But whatever problems you identify, you have to be part of the solution. You can't just identify a problem, say it's somebody else's thing to fix, and walk away from it. If you identify a problem, then you have to take part in fixing it, in getting it better. And part of that, I think, is just getting ownership. Going back to what you're saying about, breaking through the victimhood mentality is about creating ownership for things. And I agree with what you're saying. I was just thinking the other day, because, primarily we don't do a lot of politics on DissedMedia or the Daily Pitch. And I do that on purpose because politicians, in my mind, are the biggest group of people who have done nothing but have all the answers for everything. Most of them,
and they make the most money from it too. And they make the most money too.
But to your point, like, it's a lot of cronyism, it's a lot of backroom deals. It's, as they say, it's Hollywood for ugly people, right? It's a lot of people who have really strong opinions about things, most of which don't really pan out, and there's no accountability for when they don't.
Never. So, you want to hear another thing that's interesting to me right now? And I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, you go right ahead anytime.
Now you've got, quote, what is it called? Personal liability attorneys who are convincing everyone that they're going to get $10 million if they walk across the street against the light and get hit by a car. Or they convince people that if you're in a car accident, you're going to get big time money. And there are cases where a commercial vehicle may hit somebody and there may be huge damages. But I don't have $7 million of insurance on my car. So if I hit you, you're not getting $7 million from me. And most people driving have minimum insurance, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. And so when these attorneys make these claims, hey, you're going to get $7 million, you're going to get $1 million, it's just, where are they getting the money from? Most people don't have that kind of money or that kind of insurance coverage. But I see people riding bikes without helmets. I see people walking in the dark with no clothes on. It's almost like they want to get hit so that they can win a settlement.
And we've seen that, right? We've seen that even in social media, where there are people who purposely stage accidents, brake check people, hoping to get rear-ended so they can get paid. And that approach, that mentality is really just, that's a whole other world that I don't understand. Can't say that I haven't known people in my life who have had that approach to things, like, let's see how much we can get if something goes the wrong way. But it's not something that I can really get into. Like you, Mark, I'm very much, how do I take what I have, what I know how to do, and turn it into something? I don't want to ever just fall into something that I haven't earned. I want to build it. I want to own it. I want to know that I had a hand in developing it.
Ben, can I just say, that's the thing that's missing from the next generation that you talked about earlier. I don't think they grow up with that mentality. I want to fix it. I want to solve the problem. I want to be. I think they grow up with somebody else is supposed to do it for me. And that's what I think is the difference in society from when I was a kid, when you were a kid, and the children growing up today.
Yeah, I would say it's not, I always hate to paint with broad strokes. So I would agree that there is a big pattern in that. But at the same time, and I just heard this earlier today in a conversation, if you think about what people have available to them these days, right? We've got the internet. And granted, now here, again, I'm painting with a little bit of a broad brush because I know this isn't everybody's life and everybody has different struggles and challenges. But what we see in popular media, what we see in TikTok, YouTube, etc., you have a phone, you have internet, you have your friends. I'm not saying that there's no struggle, but in our generation, like I'm a kid of the 1970s, you're a kid of the 1960s. Everybody had no money then. Like everybody grew up in this state of looking at people who had things. Like everybody grew up with this want and desire. And I think that's when the 80s hit and all of that stuff blew up and things became more consumer centric, that people became more interested in experiences and stuff like that, is when it changed. What I'm getting at though is, what is the want level anymore of people? Because I think for you and I, like our generation, the want level was stronger. Like we had a greater desire to want things that we didn't have and never experienced. I think there's a large population of people these days who don't have that struggle in the same way. And so that desire to want different things, right? When you've been to Disneyland 10, 15 times, when your parents got your car for you, when the path was you're just going to go to college and don't worry about it, it's taken care of. And again, this isn't everybody, I know that, but it's a considerable enough amount of people that do kind of have that like, you know, if when you have so much that's provided for you, how do you not have this mentality of where's my stuff?
Do you remember the wrestler that ran for governor of Minnesota? Was it Jesse Ventura? Jesse?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura, when he ran for office, and one of the reasons why he probably won was because he said, we understand that we need a safety net, but that safety net for most people is a hammock today. And I think that there are a ton of people who are so comfortable either in their hammock that the government has provided for them, or they know it's there, that they don't really worry about success. And will they eat tomorrow? Will they eat the next week? And I mean, just with the government shutdown we just recently had, you heard everything. Will they restore the food banks in time before people go hungry? And you and I who are working, we wonder, are they going to get the planes running on time so we can get to our job and make money? So I think society is creating two distinct populations. One population that's dependent and one population that's busting their butt to be as successful as possible. And the middle class is shrinking because they're choosing a side, one way or another. Okay, I'm going to let them take care of me, or I'm going to go out and build my own stuff.
Yeah, I was just recently watching an episode of CBS Sunday Morning. So at the airing of this podcast, this is now a couple weeks in arrears. But for those who are interested, Ted Koppel did a piece on, we'll just say, the working poor in Metro Atlanta. And a couple of things that struck me. One is that sometimes people get in circumstances just completely no fault of their own. And what's challenging about that is, because we have so many venture capital companies that are becoming real estate owners and more rental properties are becoming kind of corporate owned as opposed to personal owned, it means that to qualify to rent from a lot of places, you have to have a really good credit score. And if you had something happen in your past that prevents you from being able to gain entry into a decent place to live, you're then relegated to these kind of extended stay hotels, and which end up costing you a lot more than if you were to find a good place to rent. And we're building this system that is, to your point, forcing more people down because we've created mechanisms that make it more difficult for people to, again, you need a good credit score to get into decent housing. But a bad credit score doesn't necessarily mean that you're a risk. How do you get people past that? Like, that becomes a challenge for them being able to live in a decent place for themselves and their family. There was another person they profiled who was using rental cars as a vehicle to do Uber and to drive for DoorDash and stuff. And I thought to myself, like, man, I don't know that I ever thought about this world that exists of people stringing together work that way and then working at that like 16, 18-hour days just to get through. But, renting a car to drive for Uber, seems pretty extreme for me. Like that seems like we got to figure out how to change that. I know that we've talked a lot about, mental models, like how do you break out of being held responsible, taking accountability for things. But man, sometimes there are people who are out there, they are taking accountability for things. They're not giving up. They're not sitting there waiting for their public assistance check. They're out there really trying to do something, but the cards are stacked against them, it seems.
So I've driven Uber myself. It was one of the ways I survived getting through cancer. And I'll get people in my car who are, quote, CNAs. Do you know what a CNA is? That's a certified nursing assistants. They do all the
Oh,
stuff
okay.
to our parents that we don't want to do. They change them, they clean them, they do that. And many of them, whenever I had one in my car, I commended them for doing the job that nobody else wants to do, because they have a old school mentality of, I'm not just going to let the government support me. I'm going to go out and work for it. And some of those people were as nice as can be. And so that person you described driving an Uber, renting a car, I give them credit because they're trying not to be a part of a system that will allow them to just
Yeah.
sit at home and take money. So I really admire anyone who's willing to put forth the effort, that where they could take the hammock that the government's offering them, but they choose to go out and work instead. I think they set an example for their children, their nieces, their nephews, and I really wish we'd elect people who pushed more people to that frame of mind instead of, come on, we'll take care of you.
I know sometimes, and I think you and I grew up in an era where there's a lot of grit, if you would. Like, I think if I had to guess, you know, uh, your parents were probably uh, people who persevered. And yes, there were challenges, but nobody was going to solve that problem but you. And so you just had to get to work and do it. My father grew up picking produce in the fields of California, dropped out of high school, got his GED in the Air Force, and didn't really come from a background of opulence by any means. But he had that kind of grit story. You're the only one who's going to solve this problem. Nobody else cares. Dig in, get it done, kind of attitude towards things. Um, and like I said, I mean, clearly, just from the story I was saying, there are still people out there who are dealing with some really severe struggles. But I don't know how we get the politicians to hear that, to pay attention to that, to really make a difference in those people's lives. Um, but I will say, like what you're talking about, like taking accountability, where do you feel we can make the biggest impact on that?
I'm not sure that we can. I know that's a weird thing to say. I think that somebody from within has got to decide, I'm unhappy where I am. I don't want to do this anymore. Those with people I talked about who are CNAs, they made a decision that I get pride from work. And some of those people are really nice. You can just tell that they take really good care of their services. So I don't know that we can. I don't think we can inspire someone to want to be great or want to do better if it's not coming from within them. The only way you do that then is if you take away what they have that makes them comfortable, and then they have to, which is kind of what happened to me when I went through my cancer journey. Everything that made me comfortable got taken from me, including feeling good about my body. So I have to do something to make myself better. And that's the only thing that's my answer. I don't know how we do it for somebody else. They have to do it. I don't know what you do other than the media stuff, but you can't get a client to pay you to improve their lives if they don't want to improve their lives themselves.
Yeah, and I will say, to the point of what you're doing, is that I think sometimes people need a place to start, and they need a little bit of help and guidance with that. I think there's a lot of people out there who probably want to do something, but they're just not sure how to get started.
I see when starting this movement, ending mediocrity, that's the person I'm aiming it at. You want better, but you don't know how. You don't want to spend necessarily $2,000 to learn a strategy to do something. You can't go back to college, but you want to know how you may be sabotaging yourself, or how you can do some simple things that you have total control over to start moving towards the more success that you want. That's what I created this movement I'm starting for, to help that person, if that makes sense.
Well, I love that because one of the things we try to do with the daily pitch, one of the things we try to do even with these podcasts is, you know, like Mark, you've got decades of experience. You've lived life. You've done things that have worked out. You've done things that have not, right? But through all of that, you've learned how to refine and get better and do things differently. And that's wisdom to be passed on.
And Ben, if I could get everyone who's hearing my voice right now to say, I'm going to do that, I'm just going to learn from my past mistakes. It's amazing how many people would instantly be able to see a way to make their lives better.
Yeah, it's that adage they say about history. It prevents us from repeating the mistakes of the past. And there's a saying I heard a long time ago, and at the time I really didn't care for it, but I think the older I've gotten, the more perspective I've gotten on it, which is people who are wealthy, the reason they're wealthy is they keep doing the things that make them wealthy. And oftentimes the reason that people are not wealthy is because they continue to do the things that make them not wealthy.
And can I add to that? Can I add to that real quick? Also,
Yeah.
people who stay poor are poor because they want, and I heard Alex Amosi say this, so I'm not going to take credit for it. He says, everybody wants what successful people have. We just don't want to do what successful people did to create it. And that's a mindset that has to change if you really want to change your life. Everybody loves the benefits of success. Few people want to do the work to create success.
And to that point, I think the perceptions of what the benefits are really skewed because, and I talk about this when I teach, I talk about this a couple times in the podcast, but when you look at a CEO, whether that's Tim Cook or Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, they're being interviewed in a nice setting, in a big house, in a big office complex. They're doing the whole walk and talk thing. And you think, wow, what a leisurely life that must be to be at the top. And it is anything but. Because most of the time, if you're running a big global company, right? I used to work for Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a product that is available in every country in the world except two, which is Cuba and North Korea. They have a vast bottling network. They have a vast supply chain network. They exist tens of thousands of workers for that company all over the world. And at any given time, something's going to go wrong and you need to know about it. And now multiply that by Ford, by IBM, by NVIDIA, by Apple, by any multinational company. These are people who literally run countries, right? They run small countries. And I can tell you this, there's no 9 to 5. There's no clocking out. They are always on 24/7, and something can be brought to their attention at any time that they'll have to get to. And for the rest of us, and by the way, we talk about the CEO, what do you think their senior management team is like? What do you think their senior directors are like? They all have the same mentality. They all have the same approach. They're not looking forward to the last day of work and the weekend because there is no last day of work and the weekend. It's just you're always 1 foot in. You don't take a vacation without your laptop. You don't take a vacation without your phone. You're pretty much always connected in some way because you have to be. And I think a lot of times when we look at people who have a lot of stuff and have a lot of things, there's a lot of energy and effort and work that goes into maintaining all of that. And it's not leisure time. It's not, despite what you might see in popular social media or movies and television, there's not a lot of recreation there.
I agree. We see the Jaguar, the jet, the big house, but we don't see what it takes to keep it. I agree 100%.
And not to say that there aren't people who do day trading, there aren't people who do Bitcoin who have figured out a method to have a little bit more leisure in their life. But believe me, a lot of times those are really volatile situations. You hear the story about the crypto guy who was doing really well and then it tanked and now he's back to hustling 12, 15 hours a day. But I think just having that perspective, here's something else we've gotten really bad about, is saying that this is my work profile, this is my personal profile. Like, I need to have separation between those things. Think that you should pursue doing the things that you love doing and just make that who you are. Like, just be that person. Back in the day when we had carpenter, the blacksmith, they were the only person in town who did that thing, and they didn't talk about, oh man, I'm just really burnt out being a blacksmith. Like, they were just the best blacksmith in town. And to that point, I think whatever it is you decide to do, adopt the attitude of just being the best at that thing. And if you enjoy it and you love it, believe me, it ain't going to feel like work.
I agree. I agree 100%.
So, Mark, what you mentioned, I want to touch on this real quick because you mentioned your books. And for those who are hearing this, tell me a little bit more about the books that you've written so far.
So in 2005, I wrote a book called Wealthology, The Science of Financial Success. Like, what actually goes into someone being successful financially. And it's not all the things that people perceive. It's more about the stuff we talked about here: experimental learning, investing, compounding interest. And interest is not the only thing that compounds. Our skills compound at every time we do them. Learning how to take advantage of leverage, which is other people doing work on your behalf, or putting all your money together to have more than you could have just on your own. That's what that book was about. The second book was called The Devil's Playbook. And it talks about the journey of Adam and Eve, who threw us, quote, all into sin, and what the devil's strategy was, or the serpent's strategy was, to get Eve to take that bite and give it to her husband so he could take a bite also. And that formula is still used today to market a lot of bad stuff. The same exact formula is still being used today to get people, to get women to be with men that they shouldn't be with, to get men to invest money or spend money on things they shouldn't do. It's how drug dealers get people to try their first hit. It's so many ways that strategy is still being used to help people get into positions and situations that are not to their benefit. And then the third book is 5 Ways Personal Development Has Failed You. And it just talks about different ways that personal development industry is designed to make money, sometimes more than it's designed to help people be successful. So those are the 3 books I've written. The book I'm writing now is called The 8 Ways to Create and Live a Mediocre Life. And it chronicles 8 very specific choices that we make that put us into mediocre situations. And that's the one I'm working on now. I'm excited about that one because I know a lot more about publishing, and I know a lot more about life than I did when I wrote those books. And again, I want to make this book not just a book, but I want to make it a movement to end mediocrity once and for all in the lives of people who want to end mediocrity in their lives.
I think your next, you may have an idea for your next. I'm going to give you an idea for your next book if you don't have one already, which one of the things I picked up on what you just said there is you're able to take all of the things that you've learned from what you've done before and channel that into creating something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a book in there for that, because just hearing your story, I can tell that there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of wisdom and insight that comes from the things that you've done. And yeah, sometimes we start something, we stop something, but you still reflect on it, you still learn from it, you still figure out, if I had to do that again, I bet I could do it better the next time.
Correct.
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, can I share a way I'm doing it with this book I'm writing that I didn't do with those first 3 books that I didn't know I could do it? I don't just want to write a book and sell a book. I don't want to write and sell a book to be a better coach or to get more coaching clients. I literally want to create something that becomes its own life, its own movement, its own thing. And that's a totally different attitude towards writing a book than I had when I wrote those books. And so I'm not trying to create a book for a book's sake. I'm trying to create a movement, and the book is at the center of it.
That is awesome. I have to say, Mark, I love the movement. I love this path that you're on. I 100% agree. We need a little bit more of this. We need a little bit more of, how do we pull ourselves out of this? So you have to look at yourself as the best investment you can make. And nobody else is going to invest in you like you will. And so if there's anybody who's going to get you out of your situation, it's going to be you first. And I love the fact that you're focused on that and working on helping people get there with that message.
Can I share one more thing I'm doing this time?
100%. Yeah.
So in the past, I've wrote the book in isolation and I published it. This time, I'm actually looking for people to be in my alpha program where they get to review the book as I write it, help me make it better, and also take case studies where they show how what they learned from my writing the book helped them improve. And that's something I didn't do before. So that's, if someone's writing a book, you can write the book in isolation. The interesting thing to me about people who write books is writing a book is very comforting and soothing. You get to sit at your desk alone. Nobody tells you no. You just sit there and you just type away at your computer. It's so much fun. Writing a book is the greatest job in the world. Unfortunately, that doesn't pay unless you're a ghostwriter. So I'm trying to teach people that if you have a book in you, it's good to write it, but you got to figure out how you're going to sell it after you write it. So one of the ways I'm doing it with this book is creating this alpha program that people can, learn as I write the book. They can see how books are written. They can see all the whole process, but they also get to benefit from the 8 ways I'm going to present to them that mediocrity is created. So that's something else I'm doing that's unique as an author.
That is awesome. And that actually segues beautifully into my next thing, which I was going to ask you, which is, Mark, how do people find you? How do they get in touch with you? What if they feel like they could be a contribution to your effort here? How do they reach you?
So my name is Mark Dulaney, spelled with a U, not an E. Everyone wants to spell it Dulaney. It's Dulaney. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Those are the 4 I'm on. And I also have a page on YouTube. My endingmediocrity.com is a way they can find me. That's my group on school, and they can learn about my alpha program. And if they connect with me on a social media platform, I'll send them a link and we can schedule a time to talk about what they got going on. And if there's a way that we can help each other, I can help them. So, but I don't want to give it out publicly because I don't want everyone to have it. I want to know the person who's scheduling appointments with me. So I won't give
that. Is fair. That is fair.
But every social media platform that I just mentioned, my name is spelled Dulaney. Find me. There are a lot of guys that look like me named Dulaney, so they should be easy to find me if there's more than one. And I'm the one that uses like a drill sergeant type motif and productive pain in the ass that you never knew you needed. So if you see that, that's me.
Hey, look, I think everybody needs a voice of encouragement, and drill sergeants, they just want to make sure you're getting through what you need to get done. No harm in that.
Sounds good, Ben. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. I can't wait to see when it comes out and listen to it and use it as a way to get even better for whatever podcast I'm on next. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, not a problem. And for everybody listening at home, thank you all for checking out DissedMedia Startup Story. And we say this, share. Like it, you give it to a friend, tell others what we're trying to do here. And we're going to come back each week with new and exciting people, going to keep you guys updated on the business and how DissedMedia is going. So if you're interested in that journey and what we're doing and what we're trying to do to spread the word, help people get better at what they do, please let us know. Mark, looks like you got one more thing.
Last thing, yeah. If you know somebody who's dependent, hopefully the government's because of problems, tell them to listen to this podcast and get a different perspective of government. That's one way you can help somebody.
Yes. The way you can help them is tell them to unplug from all of the garbage that you're hearing on either side and reinvest in yourself. That'll be the best way to help help everyone.
I was trying to help you, Ben, by telling them to listen to your podcast. Listen to Ben's podcast. Tell your friend who's struggling, depending on the government, to listen to the podcast. If they still feel the same way, that's fine. If they don't, then keep listening to Ben.
Yes. Yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much. Everybody else, thank you for dropping in, and we'll see you next time.